full couple of days. Aria spent the night with us last night. We had her all day yesterday. And we have just had a tremendous amount of activity. We went to the Y and worked out and went swimming with her, and she's making great progress in her swimming. And so anyway, it's just fun. And so she's sitting here eating with her headset on so that she can hear her tablet while we're doing the radio show. And she is a blessing. She actually is going to allow us to breathe her later. Something came up for her last night in a show that we were watching, and we told her, that she could just breathe it off and be done with it. And so she said she would be willing for us to do that. Of course, we had breathed her and her mom and dad together earlier in the year, and she did a tremendous job with the breath session. So we'll probably be doing that this afternoon to hold the space. And she was asking some really good questions yesterday. She said, okay, if you have already canceled a thought and then it comes up again, do you have to cancel it again, or is the last time that you did it okay for this time too? And we were like, no, you have to cancel it again. We explained the generational issues and that things would come up, and we would have to cancel sometimes, over and over and over again and let it go before we were totally done with it. And I can't remember exactly what the other questions were, but it's, just to see her little mind working the way that it is working, it's phenomenal. And to be a part of it, she blesses us. So Michael still hasn't dialed in, but if you have a question, and I think I've answered or read all of the questions that have come to me through the email. If you weren't on the other day, we did have to do an update on Google. There wasn't really a change to anything that you could visually see, I don't think. It's just that they required that the app be updated for the most current Android system. And so that has been done. So you may need to do an update on your phone. But like I said, I'm not sure that you'll see a difference. It's just the way it lays out on the phones. And if you've got the same phone you had, you're probably not going to see a big difference. But anyway, we're constantly moving and doing different things. And so if you want to support this work, that would be phenomenal. Just as an example, this change that we made to the app that nobody's really going to be able to tell that we made it cost $250. So, it's little things, and, we keep giving away everything that we can, but we can't do it for nothing. So if you appreciate what you're getting out of this work and you care to donate, please do so. You can do it through Zelle to our phone numbers, or if you go to PayPal, they're, of course, going to take a fee unless if you click on donate on our website, it will take a fee. If you have a PayPal account, you can send money to our PayPal account and mark it that it's to family and friends, and they do not deduct on that one. So just putting that out there, and we appreciate any support that you can give. And Michael's joined us, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you, dear heart, and welcome, everybody. Delighted and honored that you're here, that you're holding the space for this conversation that I think is perhaps one of the most important conversations for us to be having on the planet right now, especially with all the drama and trauma that's going on around the globe. So delightful to have you participating. And I actually had a conversation with Michael this morning. Michael's called in a few times and shared what his experience was of Quantum Stillpoint. And he actually put it in writing, so I didn't have to do these numbers from memory. But let's see. Actually, we've got two letters I want to share with your notes. One's from Michael, and his session was in March. So March, April, May, June, July. So we're 4 months into it. And the thing that Michael was working on was pretty intense headaches. And prior to our first session during the Quantum Stillpoint, he said he had 2 to 3 level 7 intensity headaches a week, and they would last from 24 to 36 hours. Nausea and intense sinus discomfort. Immediately after the Quantum Stillpoint, it dropped to 1 level 4 to 5 intensity headache a week, lasting 8 to 16 hours, so about half. Less intense nausea and sinus discomfort. And now, in the months that have unfolded the last few months, he's having 1 level 2 to 3 intensity headache every 2 to 3 weeks. And instead of lasting up to 36 hours, they're lasting a maximum of 6 hours. Slight nausea and still some sinus discomfort. So that's a pretty cool result. Pretty nice. And Michael, we hold the space for next level of that. Michael's traveling right now, and I think we're going to get together in the next few days and see if we can take it to the next level. And David, who called in and shared a little bit about his Quantum Stillpoint session, which was the middle of June, so we're about a month out from his session. And he wrote, "Dear Michael, as I mentioned to you earlier, I believe this is a missing tool in the pieces for Carl Jung's work." David is a certified practitioner of Jungian therapy. "The work you developed out of the Aramaic is so effective, it blows my mind how the tools in the Quantum Stillpoint sessions work so smoothly by unraveling what is foreign out of one system and restoring the flow of vital life. I don't think that I can add to the Quantum Stillpoint process, but I can say it's actively working within me, lessening all fear and hostility and increasing joy, confidence, and serenity. Lots of insights, revelations are spontaneously occurring. What seemed like a mountain now is just a molehill. It's really nothing at all but a false thought. So it's discarded in peace." I thought that was a powerful way to say it, David. "I'm also using the palms of my hand to aid the expansion of my energy by intuitively allowing my hands to naturally move up and down my spine to my brain with deep breathing. As I do, I feel a magnetic sensation and my flow of energy increases noticeably, and this keeps furthering the effects. My breathing is less restrictive and effortless. My comfort level has increased. Being around and communicating with others, social anxiety is dissolving, and it is now noticed that as just a fleeting thought. Lots of benefits. I'll keep you posted on any more developments. Blessings, David." So pretty sweet to hear that coming back. And working on with Patrick. You've heard Patrick on the show. He's a fellow naturopath, somebody I've been working with and hanging out with for the last 50 years. Working on getting him trained to do it so that somebody can do it to me, because I can't do it to myself. So looking forward to how that happens. And beyond that, I am just delighted to be alive, to have been able to go out and pick enough beautiful ripe red tomatoes this morning to have a couple of tomato sandwiches for lunch and rock and roll. So if you're out there in listener land and we can support you in any way, if you have a question, a thought. Actually, in talking with, I think it was Michael yesterday, an analogy came to me for one of the key components of Quantum Stillpoint, and that is, I've got this beautiful television here. Let's say it's the finest manufacturer, the highest resolution, just the best sound system. I mean, it is the cat's meow. But there's no antenna. There's no internet connection. What do I get out of the TV? Finest instrument going, and I get nothing. If you take the passage where the scripture saying, we've talked about this in the last week or so, and I bring this up because it's not about theology. this man was a physician. This was not some kind of hocus pocus magic miracle stuff that people want to make it out to be. This was medicine. This was healing. And you hear the passage it says, and referring to the practical application of or aspect of what happens with our genetics. He says, the sins of the fathers will be passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations of those who hate me. And you kind of wonder, well, okay, so I guess if I don't hate God, then I'm not impacted by my generational patterns. No, you are impacted by any unresolved generational patterns that are in you, because that word in Aramaic isn't hate as in a love-hate relationship. That word is separated from. So let's imagine I hook my TV up to the antenna on the roof, and I got this beautiful picture and sound, and it's the finest instrument in the world, and I disconnect the antenna. I separate the TV from its antenna. What do I get out of the TV? Well, gee, the screen is white. Gee, if I turn it up, I can hear some noise. So whatever energetic patterns are within the TV, I can get to see them. And if I cut off the signal, then I don't get any of the programming the TV is designed to express. If you use that as an analogy, and you recognize that literally the bony structure of the head, the spine, and the pelvis are literally the antenna of the human energy system, is physically, mentally, emotionally traumatized, genetically traumatized by unresolved hostilities and fears, then those energetic patterns, quote unquote, the sins of the fathers, will be expressed through the instrument called the body-mind unit of this individual, who is cut off from the signal they're designed to receive from that in which we live, move, and have our being. Remember, we talked so much about the law of resonance. Well, there's a corresponding law, or it ties in. It's actually kind of the same law. It's called induction. What's induction? Well, if I have a magnetic field and I take a metal rod and I wrap insulated wire around it, and I move that magnetic field around the wire, or I move the wire through the magnetic field, I've got what's called either a generator or an alternator. So when I move the wire through the magnetic field wraps around the wire. When a magnetic field wraps around a piece of wire, it induces a current flow in the wire. That's how, when you are running your car down the road, your battery and your lights stay charged. It's induction. It's called a generator or an alternator. The motion of the engine, you'll note that you've got to have a belt attached to your alternator or generator. You can't just have it sitting out there on the edge of your engine disconnected. Can't be separated from its source. There's a belt, and if it's turning, then it's turning these wire coils, and there's a magnetic field. And the electromagnetic EMFs, they're called, wrap around the wire and induce a current, and that's how you get electricity flowing. If you don't have your antenna properly aligned, and you're moving through an energy field of which you are made, and you remember we're told we're made in the image and likeness of love, the Creator. If we're moving, and science tells us, although we look out and we go, everything's kind of standing still, but in fact, we're moving through space at about 7,000 miles an hour. And if our antenna is properly oriented and aligned, And if you listen to what's called the Lord's Prayer, the word prayer in Aramaic has nothing to do with getting down on your knees and putting your order into the cosmic gift catalog. The word prayer means to set a trap for God. The antenna on the roof of your house is a trap for the signal from channel 2. The alternator is a trap that captures the energy from the magnet, and as a result, there's induction that induces a current flow, and you get electricity from your alternator. As we move through space at 7,000 miles an hour, if we are properly aligned and we're moving through that field which we are made of and are in resonance with, unless misaligned, we are a trap. We capture information. We get the signal. We get the program that's designed to run through our structure. If you listen to what people call the Lord's Prayer, if you get back to the Aramaic, and you just have to review the passage where the disciples don't say, "Hey, Yeshua, we know how to pray. Why don't you give us a new prayer?" They say, they don't, I'm going to expand the instruction or the conversation just a little. "Yeshua, we don't know how to pray. Teach us to pray." They're obviously confused about the subject. They don't know what it means. And the word's prayer is not a set of words to go, "Our Father art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come." That's not what it's about. Yeshua specifically said, don't do that crap. Don't repeat and repeat, because it comes from your head. It isn't effective. It's got to be out of your mind. So they said to him, "Tell us how to become. Tell us how to capture this signal, this energy in which we live, move, and have our being that will give us the highest and best direction possible if we have access to it. Tell us how to do it." And then if you listen to the Aramaic, what's called the Lord's Prayer, you find that what he did is he gave people an instruction set, how to align themselves, how to orient themselves. If I'm watching Channel 2 and I have an antenna on my roof and it's perfectly aligned and attuned, I get a great signal and a great picture on my TV set. But if somebody gets up on the roof and turns the antenna 90 degrees, what's going to happen to my picture and sound? There's not going to be a proper energy exchange. I'm not going to get a full signal. And you say, what's wrong? Why is the signal? Why is it the things I would do? Why is it the picture I want to play, I cannot play? And the things that I would not, those generational patterns that I haven't forgiven at, that I haven't resolved, the things I would not do are what I do. Paul does this in confusion. It's like, what's going on here? And most people are following Paul, not Yeshua. And Paul didn't have a clue how forgiveness worked. That's why he says in frustration, I want to do these things. Gee, last night I kind of got myself in alignment. I got this little signal that said, if I have not love, I am a tinkler. I got it. That's what I want. How do I get it? He didn't know. He didn't know. And the next minute, somebody resonated his unresolved, his unforgiven hostility or fear, and he was right back into his old murderous self. Remember, the guy was a killer. That was his job. He was finding people and having them stoned to death. And he wants to make a shift. But he doesn't know how to weaken the energy fields from his past, the sins of the fathers. I don't know about his heritage, if his father was a hired, killer either as he was at the same job. I don't know if it was a, generational job. I've never looked at it. Never actually thought of that before. But why is it the things I would not do? You ever said that to yourself? You ever said to yourself, I'm never going to do that again, and then you never did it again, right? Baloney. When the resonance was strong enough and those old energy fields of hostility and fear came up, they took over and you did it again. And then you said, I'll never do that again, and you did it again, right? I'm talking to me now, not just you. So when you get to the actual Aramaic of what, and you can go to our website and go to YouTube, go to our YouTube channel, and listen to the presentation, Living, Not Saying the Lord's Prayer. So if you go to YouTube and type in Michael Reich, you'll be on our channel, and then do a search for a couple hundred videos there, but do a search for Living, Not Saying the Lord's Prayer, and we'll lay the whole thing out. And what does it take to set a trap, to become the energy field that captures the signal, the instruction set, what was called the mind of Christ, instead of the mind of the body, the mind of man, carbon-based memory. What does it take to capture that signal and live out of that one? Well, you've got to align yourself in order to even have access to the signal. And then you've got to remove the interfering patterns that go against it, the hostility and fear-based stuff, until you've so weakened the hostility and fear-based stuff that what was called the still small voice, the weak signal coming in, you can hear. And you hear it clearly. And you follow its direction. We are not physical beings. We are energetic beings. So as I forgive, I weaken what never belonged. As I align, I capture. I am the trap. I capture the energy, a portion of it, a signal from the energy in which I live, move, and have my being. And everything changes. And so the Stillpoint breath process is one that quiets the mind, puts one into Stillpoint, where one can process the mind of man in them. Remember, our definition of process is the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present when something less than love comes up. So I can process that out. I can remove, forgive that, and choose to more and more align with the software signal is designed to carry what I really want to express in the world. And I appreciate everybody that has done the Quantum Stillpoint process so far, because I'm learning as we're interacting, as I'm getting feedback, as people are saying, well, this and this and this has happened. It's like, okay, I get it. I'm starting to understand what it is we're doing here on deeper and deeper level. So hopefully it opens a space for each and every one to recognize that there is literally a signal available to you from whatever you choose to call it. Something so far beyond our comprehension that we don't even have a clue. I know we want to reduce it to a personality like ourselves. I think that's a mistake. A personality like ourselves, how could we be living, moving, and having our being going through it? We'd crash with it. So letting go of that. And when we're guided by that, we will automatically enter into what was called, because that signal is based in love, because our being is actually the presence of love, then we're going to naturally express that energy and withdraw from. And it's a progressive process, withdraw from all forms of hostility and fear. So in a nutshell, that's what it's all about, Alfie. Hope that fits, makes sense. Maybe inspires a question or two or three, and if it does, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you in our control panel, our calling number is 563-999-4228. 3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show. And then if you push 1, that raises a hand in the control panel. And you and Jeannie and I will be having a conversation. So, Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
It's all quiet. We've got 34 minutes. Press 1.
Let me turn back to the notes from what I started with. I think it's been about 2 weeks now. I've been saying, okay, we're going to get back to this block of information. Get back to it. And we keep having more conversations, which is awesome. That's what we're here for. And I believe it was a week ago Friday that we started that. So back to that kind of block of information I want to offer. So reviewing just the tail end of what I shared in the last session where I was into this set of notes, and as I say, I think it's getting on close to 2 weeks. So forgiveness in Aramaic is a tool for changing brain chemistry of the past, freeing ourselves from generations of embedded, disintegrated mind energy. It's about removal, not letting people off the hook. You know, you will never be forgiven for anything because forgiveness doesn't have anything to do with the Greek idea of being let off the hook. The way of forgiveness applies, and you want to get to the point where you've learned to forgive pretty much continuously. There'll be a time period. And the time period for most people when they start doing this work is years. There'll be a period of years in which you will be forgiving virtually continuously. But you'll never forgive anyone. You'll never think about forgiving anyone ever again. Remember, we've been brainwashed with the Greek idea that I'm supposed to let you off the hook for what's moving inside of me. No, that's pardoning. Nothing to do with forgiveness. So forgiveness is about removal. And so when I forgive, I reach inside myself. I remove what doesn't belong. So you'll never be forgiven for anything. Forgiveness will remove what never belonged in you from the beginning. Literally, when it's used properly, it changes cellular chemistry, and diseases disappear instantly. And then when you start to engage, or you move in a more committed direction of engaging the mind energy that is an integrative nature, thoughts based in love, truth, compassion, and caring, the tissue in which that energy, that integrative energy is stored, is strengthened. Fear, hostility, defensiveness are disintegrative energies. It may seem that you can protect yourself with them. You're ready to fight. But in the long haul, the promise of hostility and fear is all a fraud. It always leads to pain and failure. Now people say, well, but there's a use for that hostility stuff. I mean, I know somebody who got really angry and they went out and they formed Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and they've changed a lot of lives. And I say, yep, I got it. And that's powerful. I mean, there's been some powerful work done by that particular group. But was it anger that changed things? Or motivated a change? Or was it intelligence? I'd offer it was intelligence. And to think that it takes anger to motivate change, that's needed, a misunderstanding, a misperception. Again, it can make change, but you know what? A mind connected with the active presence of love can make those changes and with 1,000 times more intelligence than the mind that's based in hostility or fear. And so what we're looking to do is to recognize that you and I are designed to function out of love, and that's what will always produce the highest and best possibilities for a shift or a change in your life. When you think a thought, literally, if we go to the opening words in John, in the beginning was the mind energy, and people say, Michael, you said that so many times. Yep, and you'll probably hear me say it another 1,000 times. Remember, the way that the carbon-based memory system is upgraded is through repetition. A new thought does not become an option, or a new chunk of energy in the mind does not become an option until the intensity, which means availability of it, is strong enough to be heard over other energetic patterns within the mind. So when you think a thought, a neuropeptide literally appears in your body. Something that was not there a moment ago in the so-called physical realm is now there. And these neuropeptides are proteins, each a unique structure, a reflection of and built according to the blueprint created by the thought that formed it. Each neuropeptide is designed to inform, to carry the message it contains into the cell and directs the cell's function accordingly. Each neuropeptide, when it lands on a cell, is replicated in the cell, and if we were watching that happen, call what's entering the cell chemistry. And the reason why that's so important is because individual cells, that's the primary, at least apparent method or means by which they have contact with the outside world, by which they're informed. And hostility and fear information sends so many signals to the cell ends up in protection and crisis if it's informed inaccurately. You know, one of the most common states in our culture, because of our high-stress lifestyles, because of what we've not been changed to manage our own minds, and we've not been trained, and we've not been trained how to manage our goals. And so people create stress upon stress upon stress. And as a result, people end up chronically living in a state called sympathetic dominance. You may not be familiar with the term sympathetic dominance particularly, but basically you have heard of the fight, fright, flight response. Also includes fawning. And somebody kowtows to everybody and goes, oh yes, master. Yeah, what, you know, and they're under their breath they're saying what you just said sounds idiotic, but they succumb. Oh yes, of course, because they're in that sympathetic dominant state. That means that every cell in the structure is being informed of trauma and that has a purpose. But if it's being informed in trauma when there's not actual trauma there, then the cell ends up in this protect mode. Can't be in protect mode and create health at the same time. So errant mind energy, errant thoughts, crisis thoughts, you know, the beating that somebody took when they were 3 from dad, and the boss has that same gruff voice and is always threatening. So the brain doesn't know the difference between a real and imagined experience. And if what's resonated is that beating that was taken by the child of 3, the 60-year-old man lives in the same sympathetic dominant state. And that sustains disease chemistry as long as it's present in the system. And out of that diseased chemistry comes a set of pictures called perception. And most people have been taught to believe that perception is a fact, that it's an observation of external events, when the truth is that every perception is a construct of one's own mind, accurate or inaccurate, and it's constructed out of thoughts. whose thoughts inform your cellular structure as to what's going on. Not mine. It's yours. And if your cells are being informed incorrectly, then they're living in a state they're not designed to live in. And most people think, oh, I have eyes, I look out in the world and I see what's going on out there. That's been proven to be totally and completely 100% false in the laboratory. You see nothing with your eyes. You see with your brain. Information comes in through the eye, yes. But that's information that comes in. You can't see out through the eye. And according to what information is carried on the light signals picked up by the eye or the ear, whatever the sense is, then accurate or inaccurate, it gives us, the mind takes what's resonated by that information and generates this thing called perception. And perceptions have qualities. It's not just overlooking at what's going on in the world. Those whose mental constructs are accurate, we say they're really smart. And those with poor perceptual quality, well, they're not so bright. Accurate thoughts about self, others, in the world leads to accurate perceptions, poor quality. Inaccurate thinking, perception, leads to low levels of intelligence. So when recruited into activity by an energy coming in through the senses, information in the mind resonates. Yes, an event happened in the world. My senses give me information, and that information is fed to my brain. That then resonates content throughout my structure. Stored neuropeptides or thoughts become part of each of our constructed perceptions. And that means that often, especially when one's in fear and hostility, that perception, our own personal reality, has little or nothing to do with the actuality, what's actually happening in the world. Anybody ever had that happen? Somebody accuses you of something, of saying or doing something that you absolutely never said and you absolutely never did? What state were they in? Were they in a sweet, loving, wondrous state when they accused you? No. They were in some form of hostility or fear. Hostility or fear is simply a signal that my mind is using corrupt data to build the world that I see or I think I see. There's an interesting book. There's a link to it on our website. And it's a book that the CIA spent, I don't know how many millions developing. They did research on human intelligence. And there's one chapter on perception. And here's what the CIA says in writing in their book. Perception is demonstrably an active rather than passive process. It constructs rather than records reality. It goes on to say people continuously construct their own version of reality. So you have a reality, I have a reality. We stood and watched an actual event. An actuality happened. And our realities are reflections of what that actuality resonated in us. There's a man named Anil Seth. You do a search for his TED Talk. He's a professor of cognitive science cognitive and computational neuroscience at the University of Sussex in England. And do a search on YouTube. He does a really wonderful TED Talk. Just type in your YouTube search bar, TED Talk, Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. And he tells us exactly how the mind constructs its perceptions. And it isn't a picture of what's going on in the outer world. Instead of believing what the mind tells us, Recognize that if hostility or fear is moving in you, collapse the hostility and fear-based perceptions, drop into the root of them and clean them out. In doing that, you'll become a fully expressed human being. I love what Albert Einstein wrote about it, about being human. He says, a human being is a part of a whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. Delusion is a kind of prison for us, says Einstein, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty. Now, if you listen to that, does that sound like anything like a man 2,000 years ago? And they said, what's most important in the law? And he says, you must have Rahma, that is the gateway that brings love and compassion through and into your structure, active when you think of a neighbor, when you think of the Creator, when you think of self. In other words, you've got to have human life. And that's exactly what Einstein's saying here. You've got to bring the active presence of love forward, because the active presence of love is literally your human life. So that's the bottom line, what this work is about. And each neuropeptide, literally these molecules formed within us when we think a thought, is a what we call physical reflection of a thought that we've engaged in. And each thought communicates and inserts an energy, a message, into the cell. The messages receive deeply impact every activity of that cell, including changing the action and rewriting our genes. The impact, at least the best I'm understanding at this point, is when you move from still point breathing to quantum still point, the mind allows epigenetics to collapse, which leads to the correction of all of the overlays that have come from our generations. It's where the power of it lies. So this mechanism of thinking a thought, producing neuropeptide landing on a cell, neuropeptide inserting itself in the cell, this mechanism of cellular communication was originally designed to inform the cell about the actual world. Dead for most people, especially if you live in sympathetic dominance, a relatively new skill, perception made up by us, interrupts the process by inserting in place an artificial construct, literally a whole made-up world that's a projection from past unresolved experiences held in this structure. When we construct realities, when we construct perception using past thoughts out of memory, we get a picture generated by the mind, and it's a false picture. Remember that person I asked you about who accused you of saying something you never said and doing something you never did? They were living in a world generated by their own minds. And most people, especially if one's in hostility or fear, most people live just totally and completely divorced from the actual world. The objective of this work is to remove those false constructs, and the signal that tells you that your mind is locked in a false construct is some form of hostility or fear. So the false now inserted, instead of awareness of truth based in love, that being the root of perception, picture now that perception is now massaged into appearing as the present. It's an internal construct looking like an external picture. You need to learn if you're going to ever change that game. If you find yourself in hostility or fear more often than you'd like to be, if you're ever going to change that game, then you've got to learn how to drop into what's beneath those constructs. And that's what first century Aramaic forgiveness is about. That's what our app is about. If you're not aware that we have the world's only actual forgiveness app, if you go to your app store on your phone and you type in Heartland, Heartland, Heartland Aramaic, Aramaic, forgiveness, you'll see an app that comes up with a red glowing heart, and that's our app. And it shows you how to collapse these internal constructs that really look like we're looking at something through our eyes. The process of living in perception is what happens inside of most people. It's a lot of minds, and it tricks them into believing that their realities are true about the world, when the fact is they're only true about the person with the perceiving mind. The constructs of our own mind tell us first and foremost about the content of our own minds. And you can verify that very easily by recognizing that you're the one that's feeling the impact of it. Well, yeah, but I'm only feeling this because they said that. No, you're feeling this because this is in here. Nobody can make you feel anything. So formed from content acquired in the past, perceptual constructs or realities, they appear in our mind. We've been taught by the world that they're present moment experiences. And when these images and pictures, factually, they're just replays from the past. You know, when it becomes extreme, they're referred to as flashbacks. Someone who lives in, the world calls it PTSD. You can take the D off. It's really not post-traumatic stress disorder. It's really the way a person successfully copes with things that were just too traumatic to be dealt with. Most people live, especially if they've been in, violent or difficult circumstances, most people live in images regenerating themselves from the past, replaying out whatever hasn't been resolved. And if you haven't been trained to understand that, then you can't tell the difference. A reality comes up and you go, oh, well, that's what's happening. Now, again, remember the person who accused you of saying what you didn't say, doing what you didn't do. They were in some form of hostility or fear. That's the indicator. Excuse me. That's the indicator, hostility and fear, that the mind is using corrupt data to produce its constructs. On its own, the mind cannot distinguish whether one is reliving an hallucinated reality or whether it's an accurate perceptual construct. And hostility or fear is one of the markers that tell one that they're stuck in an hallucination. And their hallucinations, though not always, the blame game can be played with themselves, that of some sort of fear or hostility, but these markers are the prominent features of the mind's lies. Hostility and fear indicates that your current perception is being formed from the past and therefore is not the truth. Now, you could say to yourself, well, yeah, but I saw that threat coming and I protected myself from it. Yes, I understand. And so it was somewhat beneficial. Your mind is striving always to do the best it can to keep you surviving. But what it doesn't inform you of is as long as you hold on to that trauma, you're continuously, literally sending out a high energy field that invites somebody else to come and do that trauma with you. Read my book. If you haven't read Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Unfortunately, I can't sell you a copy. It's out of print, but you can go to Amazon or eBay, and there are always used copies available. And or you can go to our website and just go to whyagain.org/book. Why again? whyagain.org/book. And you can download the book in any one of, I think, 9 languages now. So if there's hostility or fear in your perception at any given moment, it's being formed from the past. Hostility and fear are just markers that the mind's using corrupt data. So thoughts from the past, the mind has this amazing ability, it converts thoughts into pictures. So the mind is continuously bringing these resonated thoughts from the past forward and constructing them with the pretense that it's a live present moment. You remember the man Yeshua said, don't judge by those appearances. When these constructs, these hallucinations get between us and our loved ones and our lives, the results can be devastating. And it always amazes me, and I'll put myself in the category along with everybody else. It always amazes me that we can know this, but when the stress is up and the chips are down, when that hostility or fear comes up, that reality looks real. And we believe that the mind's telling us the truth. They're the places where forgiveness needs to be applied. Now again, in our errant external Greek idea, what we've been fed of forgiveness is that we're supposed to let others off the hook because our minds are replaying experiences of sadness or rage or fear or trauma. But forgiveness is how you remove those energetic dynamics. You get to the root of them and you literally remove them from the cell. The mind functions throughout the whole body. And wherever these disintegrative energies are stored, the tissue is in a diseased state. And each and every person must ultimately take responsibility for and remove these habitual thought disorders. The person you think or the event you think causes your pain only surfaces realities that are already within you. That's a tough lesson, especially if we come from 1,000 generations of people who've lived in denial, which means most of us. Now, with the tools, our painful experiences can be the opportunity for monumental healing. Literally, the chance to forgive, to undo or dismantle generations of inherited repeating traumas. That's the essence of the book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Please go to our website, whyagain.org/book. It's there in at least 9 languages. Download it, free. And Jeannie, I see we're down to about 5 minutes. So I'm thinking maybe we just check in and see if there's anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room.
It is still all quiet here. Oh, a hand just went up.
Awesome. Let's say hello.
541.
Hello.
Celinda. Welcome.
How are you? Welcome, welcome.
We're on it, young lady.
Pardon?
I say we're on it.
All right. Let's be on it. I sent you those links I told you about there yesterday, so they'll be in your email. And also, I have 2 quick thoughts. One is I'm beginning to think that the ego mind is not a mind at all. It's just the brain. So
we call it mind.
Pardon?
Yeah, we call it mind. But it's no more mind than a computer cycling information has a mind. The function looks like the mind, and most people call that their mind, but it's nothing but, and we call it the replicant mind. All it's doing is repeating whatever information is there, and what it shoots up is not thinking. You know, the truth is, if most people said what they thought, they'd be speechless.
Right. It's the conscious side of the brain, like the neo-mammalian brain, And it's the automatic program, and it's when the conscious side of the brain is not hooked up with Brahma.
It's got to be there. You're right.
In the infusion, it's when the infusion of the Christ mind, which is consciousness, awakens the actual consciousness of the conscious brain, which is an AI, if that makes any sense, if I haven't gone down a rabbit hole.
Well, my take would be it's about awakening the being, and that's not AI, but what the mind is doing is really just a form of AI. And the cheap copy of thinking, the ego in us has a cheap copy of everything that's real in the spiritual dimension, and the ego's cheap copy of thinking is cycling information. The best definition I've been able to come up with for thinking is that thinking is the ability to keep love conscious, active, and present no matter what's moving within you.
Cool.
And the thinker becomes a genius, because if love is conscious, active, and present, and there's corrupt data moving within one, that corrupt data dissolves and they're freed of it. And the higher mind is then available. The actual mind is available, what was called the mind of Christ.
Wow, what an intricate, beautiful pattern.
So when love is conscious, active, and present, that's thinking.
All right. Keep saying that one. The other thought I have is not only if we feed ourselves with love that we are, then they grow, evolve, and prosper as soul. We do. And if we turn around and find ourselves in hostility and fear and do not forgive it within ourselves, that ourselves will then go back to a more diseased state. Am I perceiving, discerning that?
Well, I don't know about a more diseased state, but if hostility or fear is moving, we're now aware of, we're in touch with the diseased state, and if we refuse to use the tools to change it, then the disease process is simply going to continue. The idea of this work is to eradicate the disease process.
There you go. I like that. Okay. Well, those were my two thoughts, Michael.
Awesome. Well, you're on it, young lady. That's awesome. I'm with you.
All right. Well, I'm with you, too. You and Gina.
All right. Well, you have a blessed day.
All of us. Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
All right. Lots of love and blessings. Thank you.